So Christianity today disagrees with the idea that Trump is our anointed, God's anointed one, our anointed leader. They say the President of the United States attempted to use his political power to coerce a foreign leader and to harass and to discredit one of the president's political opponents. That is not only a violation of the Constitution, more importantly, it's profoundly immoral, they say. His Twitter feed alone, with his habitual string of mischaracterizations, lies, slanders, is a near perfect example of a human being who is morally lost and confused. I love it. Of course, there is a faction in Christianity that supports Trump, and they are still real big on that. And they kind of address those folks. But I'm going to switch to the end here and say that I'm going to read the last paragraph, which is pretty powerful. We have reserved judgment on Mr. Trump for years now. Some have criticized our reserve. But when it comes to condemning the behavior of another, patient charity must come first. So we have done our best to give evangelical Trump supporters their due, to try to understand their point of view, to see his prudential nature of so many political decisions that they have made regarding Mr. Trump. To use an old cliche, it's time to call a spade, to say that no matter how many hands we win in this political poker game, we are playing with a stacked deck of gross immorality and ethical incompetence. And just when we think it's time to push all our chips in the center of the table, that's when the whole game will come crashing down. It will crash down on our reputation, on the reputation of evangelical religion and of the world's understanding of the gospel, and it will come crashing down on a nation of men and women whose welfare is also our concern. So.
And that's Christianity Today publishing an article on how their view is that Trump should be impeached and removed from office. And the interesting thing for me through the course of all this is not so much that people are taking sides. People are always going to take sides.
Yep.
But it's about who and what takes what side for what reason, and when do they change, or do they change at all?
That's right. That's right. So this riled up the evangelicals a bit, and Trump, and I've got two tweets from him that were pretty choice that I thought I'd read as a response. He said in a tweet, December 20th, the day afterwards, a far-left magazine, or very progressive, as some would call it, which has been doing very poorly and hasn't been involved with the Billy Graham family for many years, Christianity Today, knows nothing about reading a perfect transcript of a routine phone call and would rather have a radical left non-believer who wants to take your religion and your guns than Donald Trump as your president. What a long, complicated sentence. No president has done more for the evangelical community, and is not even close. And it's not even close. You will not get anything from those Dems on stage. I won't be reading E.T. again. He means C.T.
Okay. I was like, Entertainment Tonight did something too?
Entertainment Tonight. So he's, a little pissy there. But he went on to say...
hang on, because that's a satire site.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Then we'll stop.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm like looking at the heading going, he went on to say, I'm not convinced he went on to say.
I'll double check my facts and bring it another time. But he...
That's the thing, though. That one for years on the show and on other shows, on Nonprofits and everything else, we talked about the fact that when it comes to various religious beliefs and what people, not all people, but what some people might say or think on behalf of a religious belief, it's impossible to parody, because the thing that you come up with that is supposed to be ridiculous, somebody out there believes.
Okay.
And I'm so frustrated by the gluck of internet satire sites and how often everybody just looks at them like, okay, here, this is true. It was like so there was a satiric site that site bought the satire site CNN.
Uh-oh.
but except that CNN's not satire. So that was the joke they were making. In any case,
Okay.
setting all that aside,
Kind of meta.
yeah, it's frustrating to me because we were talking about this yesterday on the drive to Houston, because I've got Android Auto in my car, and so the navigation will pop up on the thing, and I can just, ask questions. Like I'm not going to say the key phrase that will kick off people's phones, because evidently I have a voice that's generic enough that if I were to say one of the names of one of the phones, it just respond, and I don't want to cut the show out. But we would ask questions. At one point it was like, which city has a larger population? And you can ask, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop? And it turns out there's an actual answer that some students came up with. You can have it tell you a joke. But if you ask it, and screw you, Google, for being cowards, if you ask it, do vaccines cause autism? Instead of going with the actual science, it just points you to a Wikipedia article on the controversy. And the same thing with the 9/11 truth stuff. Now, we live in a time where we have more access to more information than ever, and where we know far more. If you ask it whether or not the Earth's flat, it says no.
Okay.
So good job, Google, for not being cowardly about everything.
What about lizard people?
Yeah. But one of the problems is that you can't be an expert on everything, including who to rely on. And it's unavoidable that we have to rely on stuff. It's like, oh, well, this scientist says, or this scientist says. And it's not about what a scientist says or what science says, because science isn't a thing. All we can do is talk about the current best models that we have and the evidence supporting them. And it's very difficult to figure out, I can't be an expert on every subject.
Right.
However, we also are seeing a resurgence of flat earthers and science denial and all that. And once upon a time, a satire site might have been interesting for me. And now they're just frustrating because they get passed around as if they're real news. Even when they clearly label themselves, satire site or, people don't do that. As a matter of fact, most people don't read beyond the headline. It's like, oh, so-and-so said this, let me post it. And that's why, so Kobe Bryant died today in a helicopter accident, which at least that's what was being reported before I got on here. It started off as a TMZ live report, and then there were several other sites that were using that site as a source. And so some of my more skeptical friends were like, has anybody heard about this from a reputable source? Because this is what's being reported, and I don't necessarily want to trust it. And then CBS did a news article on it. And I, like probably most everybody else, went, okay, now it's real. But the truth is, I don't know what CBS's source was. CBS's source could have been TMZ for all I know. Now it's around enough that enough time's passed that I would have expected, if this story weren't true, one of the reputable news sites would have said, no, this is a hoax or whatever else. And so I would imagine that we're up against, memorials on SportsCenter right now. And debates over, and I don't know anything about basketball. I'm not even going to pretend to. I mean, there's a debate, Kobe or LeBron or whoever, put up your fights. But we have access to more information, but we also have access to more misinformation. And we need to all be understanding that every single one of us can and has been fooled. Every single one of us has believed something without good reason. There's no perfect thinker, and that you can't just go, oh my gosh, how can you possibly believe this when there's this piece of information, this and this and this and this. It's not up to me to educate everybody on everything I know or that they don't. It's just impractical. But maybe exercising a little bit of charitable thinking, a charitable listening, and an understanding that, yeah, we've all been duped by something at some point. And now we live in a time where you'd like to think it should happen less often, but it's actually happening more often. And fake news, the rallying cry of some people, the reason that is successful in getting people to disregard real news is because there is, in fact, so much fake news, and we're all aware of it. And I think the biggest hurdle we face is recognizing just how often we've been misled and fooled. The problem is that there are people who take that and then they spin conspiracy theories out of it. Oh, you're being lied to about this, you're being lied to about this, and that means you're being lied to about this and this and this and this and this, and you can't trust science, and you can't trust the news, and you can't trust anybody. And they're not entirely wrong. It's just the conclusions they make. It's really easy to take a whole bunch of disparate facts and weave together a compelling story. I mean, that's what a murder mystery is. You know, the author knows who did it at the beginning, but their entire job in a mystery story is to give you information to lead you away from the right answer, to disguise it, so that when you get to the point where the detective is solving the mystery, it can feel like an aha moment to you. And then you think you solved the damn mystery, when really somebody's just spoon-feeding you misinformation until they give you the truth.